everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We'll get started in one short second here. Just want to go over a few housekeeping items. If you need closed captionings, there is a button on the bottom right-hand side of your screen that you can click to turn on. Today's webinar will be recorded, and you can always find the recording in the email we'll send tomorrow or under the Knowledge Base tab on our website under webinars. And we will do some live demoing throughout the webinar today. And if you have any questions, there is a question box. You can put that in there. Myself and Johanna are on the back end, and we can answer questions throughout. If we don't get to the questions, we might have some time during the webinar to answer them live. If we don't get to those, we can always give you an email afterwards. And with that, Bob can take it away.
So we kind of put together this whole AI webinar series a long time ago, and we had this title because we didn't really know what we were going to be doing by now when we first started it. But it's actually, I think, going to be a little bit more interesting. We were going to review, like, how our API works and this new term called MCP, which is how the AI models talk to transactional systems like us. But the highlight of the session after I do some slides here is going to be Dewey doing a couple of demos live with our MCP. So hang in there, and we'll get through this. I'll do a little bit of history on RunSignup API and what we've kind of done to enable AI via a couple mechanisms to date. I'll talk a little bit about our AI infrastructure, and then I'm going to hand it over to Dewey, and then I'll take it back and I'll let you know what the plans are for 2026 and beyond. So we actually started exposing our API back in 2010 when we started. We kind of had this philosophy of being an open vendor, and we built up a considerable, robust set of APIs all around our product. And what an API does is it basically allows one program to talk to us and vice versa and trade information back and forth. And so we use that for our own set of tools for the race day stuff, like race day scoring and race day check-in. So when you're using the check-in app is actually going up to RunSignup and saying, who are the participants in this race? And then when you check somebody in, it goes back up to RunSignup and says, oh, they're checked in, and oh, their bid number is 132. We have a bunch of third-party tools, a lot of scoring software and timing tools that are used in the market by third-party vendors are integrated with RunSignup. We have a lot of customers who have done direct development to the API. And then we have a lot of customers, a lot of them are in the peer-to-peer fundraising space. They might have Salesforce or DonorPerfect or Blackbaud as their CRM for their donations and stuff, but they use us for their peer-to-peer event, for their cycling event or their walk or run or something like that. And what they want to do is they want to take all the fundraising data and all the fundraiser information and all the donor information and dynamically put that into their own system. So that API is used like a lot. So on Thanksgiving, there'll be over 500,000 people be checked in with our check-in app, and over 500,000 people will be scored with our scoring software, and even more than that with third-party scoring software. And so we're talking millions and millions of API requests and responses are going to be happening that day, all in real time, very scalable, very secure, very, very fast and expansive. And there's two types of API. One is when you pull information. So it's that check-in app pulling the information to say what participants are in the race. And then the other is the pushing the data, and it's like, okay, here's the bib number for that person. And then when you think about an API, there's kind of two classes of API. One is a public API. An example of public API is information that is public anyway. So an example would be if a race puts up results publicly on their website, then those results are available via the public API. So lots of people could pull those results and do something interesting with them. We do that for our race listing service as an example of that. So you can get a list of all the races via our API. And there's probably, I don't know, at least dozens, if not 100 different websites around the web, like Running USA or Find a Race, that call our API to get a list of the races and get the logo and stuff like that. The other type of thing is private information. So participant information is private, right? So you want to make sure that that's kind of locked down and the participant information. And when you call the API, that little, all the little courier font here on the right-hand side is what you get back from the API. So if you called the API and asked for participants, it would give things like a user ID and a name and an email and an address and a date of birth and gender and things like that, right? So, but to do that, we want to lock that down. So there's various different mechanisms for that. The modern mechanism is something called OAuth 2, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So we have this API around us, and it's proved to be very fortuitous as we have started moving into this AI arena. And we've done a couple of things that are pretty big. One is that with AI, there's a bunch of tools out there that allow for vibe coding. So we've used a lot of a tool called V0, and we've documented that. We've got probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 webinars talking about that. Soren actually has developed a set of timer utilities and has a public website for that. So a number of timers are signed up for this, and they actually use these vibe coded applications to do split analysis or result display and things like that, results receipts and things like that for races. And so the way that these vibe code tools work is that you just point them at our API, and the tool actually understands what our API does. And then you say, hey, build me a list, a race calendar application. And this was the first application that we built. I happened to stumble upon this tool, and one rainy Saturday, I built a little calendar application in an hour and a half. And it was just like, you just pointed at our API and it understands it. So the fact that we have this robust API has allowed us to, and our customers, to kind of accelerate in this area of AI. The second place we've used it is with our AI chatbot. So we now have over 400 event websites that are using the chatbot in production. In the month of November so far, we've actually had thousands of chats that have happened. So what we're hoping is that this helps our customers reduce their support and email load that they get, because people can ask the chatbot questions directly. Some of that chat information is based upon the content of the website. And one of the reasons why our chatbot works really well is because you have to have the content and things like a frequently asked questions section in the website, that we know the data, we know the structure, so we can help train the AI on what your event is all about. The other thing that we've started to do is kind of utilize that API and this other thing that I'll talk about in a second, MCP, to actually show real-time data. So the example that's coming from the database, actually. So the example that we use is the results API, and I'll show you an example of that here in a sec. So what is MCP? So MCP is this protocol that was invented by Anthropic and introduced actually 1 year ago. So it was November of last year. And so the industry has really coalesced around this kind of standard. And what it does is it provides kind of an interface between the large language models like ChatGPT and real transactional systems, and they do that via API. So what we've done is we've kind of built an MCP. And so what happens is that, a real life user asks a naturally worded question. The LLM takes that and converts that into something that it can talk to the MCP with. The MCP calls our API, API returns it to the MCP, which returns it to the LLM. The LLM takes that JSON looking thing that we had seen in the API, and it turns it into naturally worded response. So that's what MCPs do. And the example that is actually live now as of a couple of days ago is that result information is available in in the chatbots, the 400 chatbots that are live now. So you can ask questions like, what was Steven Sigwart's time this year? And it shows you their time. And can you provide a summary of his past performances? And it shows a summary of his past performances. And so, how about the Bickle family? And it says, I don't really understand that. And I said, anyone with the last name of Bickle. And it puts together this whole big list of all the Bickles. So my daughters have run it and my wife has run it and stuff like that. So you can see all the past performances of all the Bickles. And what's happening is basically this. So we've asked naturally language type of questions. The AI translates that into a query into our API. Our API sends back the results, and then it formats it into something that's more readable than that, all those brackets and things that you saw earlier. So on a higher level, conceptual level, RunSignup has this big, huge platform. And on the left-hand side is basically how everybody works with it today. So participants, ticket buyers, event directors, and they use a variety of different tools, our event websites, our event dashboards, APIs, Google search, and stuff like that. They talk to our platform. And our platform's big. It's got millions of lines of code and thousands of database tables in it. So what we've done is we basically built an MCP service that's not fully public yet. So we're only just kind of improving it internally and playing with applications. But the API is available. And so what's going to happen is this new AI world that's a lot more interactive. It uses natural language rather than check boxes and form filled out boxes. You're having conversations. And so it's going to open up a whole new world of access to participants, ticket buyers, and event directors. So what the architectural diagram looks like is that we've got this big database. We've got our transactional system that makes sure everything is correct down to the penny. We've got this open API. We basically have matured our API and conformed to this industry standard called Open API now. And we put this level called OAuth 2 on top of that. And then the MCP server is part of us as well, and that talks to this layer in here. So the early infrastructure work we've done is we built this open API around it. We've built and modernized our OAuth 2 mechanisms. We've got this OAuth 2 DCR that I'll talk about on the next slide. And then we've kind of reoriented our architecture internally to expose specific subdomains that will allow us to scale, because we have an expectation that this area of access to our systems is going to grow a lot over the next 5 years. So OAuth 2 dynamic client registration, that DCR, it's something you guys will never really have to worry about. Basically, it just puts a login box. So the idea is that you're sitting in ChatGPT someday and you're going to want to get to data that's in your race dashboard. RunSignup's going to pop up this basically a login to RunSignup. You'll log into RunSignup and your ChatGPT session will have access to your data. No one else will have access to your data. You'll have it done. Now it's complicated. The technical details are all down here. And you can look at them in the slides afterwards, but that is a type of infrastructure that we're putting in place to try to make AI more accessible and usable for our event directors. So kind of over the next 1 to 6 months is we're kind of building out more of this infrastructure. Because we are at scale, we have to make sure that it can scale. So when we turn on chatbot access, we have to handle hundreds and thousands of chatbots, not just a few that we curate for a couple of customers. And we want to make this open and usable by everybody. We're going to be working on our own secure chatbot. The one that we use for the website stuff can be a little bit less secure, and we were able to get it out the door sooner because of that, because it's not accessing any of the private information, and it's not going to do a real transaction or anything. Having our own chat bot puts it within our own security context, and it puts it on our own system so that we know that we've got control over it and that it's secure, scalable, and so forth. And we'll start simple, and then we'll start to build up the features of this. As we mature, we'll build things like these RAG systems and a bunch of vector databases for different applications. So Dewey is part of that infrastructure team that is building this stuff out. And the goal is that that team is going to build this infrastructure in a way that every one of our developers will be able to use it. And so if a developer is doing something on the front end or in a dashboard page, they can decide if they want to add a chat type of mechanism. So if I was working on improving the coupon page, I could add a chat mechanism that would allow somebody to create a coupon with this infrastructure. And then what's going to happen, kind of evolve kind of after that, and kind of coincident with that, is that the chat interfaces like ChatGPT and Gemini are going to start to understand our MCPs. And so rather than you having to be inside of RunSignup or inside of a RunSignup dashboard, you'll be able to sit inside of Gemini or ChatGPT and do similar types of things via these chat interfaces over time. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dewey.
Yeah, so today I want to show off two of the projects that we're working kind of in parallel. We have some MCP work, and then we're also working on our agentic kind of transaction chats. So kind of to demo what Bob was talking about with our MCP work, we have created a RunSignup MCP that is kind of a layer on top of our API that makes it a lot easier for LLMs to connect to our platform and get the data, or get a lot of relevant data. So I am in this MCP inspector right now, and I can show how easy we have it set up to connect to our MCP. So we're using OAuth 2, and OAuth 2 is just really great for letting me into this system securely. I have to walk through these couple steps and basically just go enter our platform, get our token, and we should have access. So I'm already logged in. So I just gotta authorize, get my little OAuth 2 token, continue to step through these steps. And now my authentication is complete. It knows, I'm a RunSignup admin, and we can connect to our MCP. So every MCP has a list of tools that the LLM can reference and can decide if it's relevant to call. So we have a couple that we decide to expose, mainly about getting race information and getting user information. So we can get user info here, we have some to get results, and we have some to get race information. So I figured a good example would be to step through how an LLM would kind of process a query in the backend, but we're going to do it manually. So this is a query that, an LLM might get in like a chat interface. And it says, retrieve the results for the Great Donut Race for the participant Joe Runner. So if I was an LLM, if I was ChatGPT, I would think, okay, I am looking to retrieve results. Probably the best fitting tool for this is our search event results tool. So the LLM might go in here and see if it can call our MCP and get the data for it. It would say we have the first name Joe, last name Runner, but then we realize we don't have the race ID, and the user that was interacting with the chat didn't provide the race ID. So that might be an issue. The LLM is gonna realize that we're missing some information and see if there's any other way to derive that. Fortunately, we do have another tool we can call, which is our get race ID. And we can look at what this requires and see if we can get some more race information before we start to query for results. So looking at this get race ID tool, it says that we can put in the event name. So I can put in the Great Donut Race and get some more information about the result. So this is kind of the result that comes back when when you interact with the MCP. It looks very much like API data in terms of the JSON, a lot of brackets and stuff that Bob was talking about. And here we have some relevant information, some more information about our event. Most notably is we have this race ID that we were missing earlier. So 4657, we just called this first tool, got a little bit more information. Now we can take this 4657 over here and call our second tool, which is search event results. And so I'll put in my race ID, put in Joe and runner. And if I run the tool, this is calling the MCP, which goes to call our API, which fetches the results for this guy, Joe Runner, in this race. And once again, here's our data in JSON format. And it has basically everything that we could need. Name, date, city. This guy ran a 30-minute race. He placed 26th place and he had a 8:57 pace. So any LLM now with all this information, they can digest it. And the last step is just create that natural language response. So this is kind of how it works in the backend, how a tool like ChatGPT will interact with our MCP to get more information on our servers. I can go ahead and show how it would look in actually ChatGPT. So we have a little bit of a developer environment set up here. And the benefit to these ChatGPT developer environments is that it lets us connect local MCPs for testing. So this is our beta MCP for RunSignup that I just demoed over here. I was able to connect it with ChatGPT, and now ChatGPT can start to digest all the tools that we offered and start to call them if it deems that's some relevant information we need. Looking further down the screen, we have all these other tools. They should all be pretty familiar. These are tools and MCPs that OpenAI has fully integrated. So that means that for any normal account, these are tools that the ChatGPT can call upon if it deems that is needed. Right now, we're working on getting our RunSignup test MCP over to here so that it's just always available for every user all the time. That's something we're working on. But we can, with our developer environment, we can start to mess around and see how it would interact. So a little bit tricky today because we've seen some outages on OpenAI's end where we're having some issues, or they're having some issues connecting servers to test environments. But I have plenty of previous examples to show how ChatGPT will interact with our MCP. So using the earlier prompt that I was just kind of walking to prototyping, when I put it into this over here, when I put it into ChatGPT, I'm gonna say query RunSignup via MCP, just because we're in a test environment. This is something that in the future you will not need to do this. The language model should know what the best tool for the job is and then just call RunSignup because it deems that's probably the best place to get this results information. But okay, so I sent in a natural language response. ChatGPT is going to process it. It's going to realize, okay, I need to call a couple tools from RunSignup to get more information because I don't have the answer to it right now. The first tool that ChatGPT is going to call is this get race tool. So it's going to say allow race search for the Great Donut Race. Allow searching for race ID and name of the Great Donut Race using the race name filter. No participant data is shared in this request. So it is asking me if it's able to call this get race ID tool from our MCP, and basically doing the same thing that we just walked through earlier. It realizes we have the name of the race. So let's try and get some more information about the race. And this is kind of what ChatGPT has done in the background. It's made this call, gave it one parameter, and now it has all this information here that it can also digest. And most importantly, is that race ID. So that's the first call that ChatGPT will make. It's going to realize it still doesn't have the results to answer the question for this prompt. So it's going to look to see if there anything else I can do to get more information. So the next tool that ChatGPT will call is to search for race results. So it's going to say, allow RunSignup to search race results for a participant, Joe Runner, with this race ID. And if I click into the details, this is exactly what is interacting with our MCP. It's going to put in the race ID, the first name and last name. And then on our end, we're going to return a lot more information back to ChatGPT. So with all this information, the LLM can digest it, and doing what it does best, it can just format it back into a good natural language response for the user. So this is a kind of a simple example of how when we have MCPs that are exposed, language models like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini can interact with them, get more information, and serve better responses, and just give our platform more exposure in these other other places. So our simple query here, we asked for the results for the Great Donut Race for this guy Joe Runner, and ChatGPT did a couple calls in behind the scenes and gave us all this information in return. So that's one good example of our MCP. It's something we're gonna continue working on. We have a bunch of tools that we still have to put into our MCP, and we're gonna continue to forward on that.
One of the
next
cool
thing,
things, just to add in here, one of the cool things that's going to happen when ChatGPT has access to our MCP tools, they'll be able to access via MCP all of the race information. So just like Running the USA has all of our races on their calendar, ChatGPT will have MCP access to all of the races. We'll have information like where the location is, what the price is, all the information that's in the publicly available, API. So we think that that will help improve our events discoverability when people are searching for things within one of the chat type of products out there.
yeah, we have a lot of information and tools that we want to expose to the MCP. That's just going to be a lot of value to these language learning models. All right, next thing that we're also working on that's really cool is our agentic transaction processes. So we are building out ways to do registrations and purchases through a chat interface. And here I have a little example event to kind of walk us through it. 1 second. This is my little holiday drive-through lights show. We have 2 tickets, just a general entry and a fast path. But instead of going in here to, sign up for my tickets and fill in a bunch of forms, I can just stay on this page and chat with a AI assistant, and it can help me do a transaction. So I can start with something like, I would like to buy 2 of the cheapest tickets. This interaction is a lot different because it can handle natural language a lot better. So I didn't specify any tickets. I just asked for the cheapest ones, and I want 2 of them. And we can digest that and find first the cheapest ticket, which is over here, and we're going to get 2 of them. So now we have our 2 tickets. We added it to the cart. The total looks correct. I can even go ahead and say, actually, I want 3. And it should digest that and update the prompt. So yeah, so now we have 3 tickets. Our new price is $130, and we can go ahead and start our registration process. Yeah, just like any other registration process, it just needs some basic information. I'm gonna give it my first name, see what else it needs. my last name. The cool thing with this is that it can handle natural language well. So I can say something like, my last name is Nguyen. And it should be able to know to kind of disregard all this information and just take this bit of data here to fill in for the last name. Put in my email. And it looks like that's all the information it needs to register for the event. So now I just got to do payment. And payment, just like normal, I'm going to go with credit card information and say something like, my credit card info is yada, yada, yada. Expiration date and a CVV of 737. The model should be able to, or our service should be able to digest that we gave in multiple fields, and it should be able to break these down into the individual parts of data. It can also do that for up here too, if I just wanted to write a lot of information in one prompt. Looks like I need one more thing, my zip code and my country. My zip code is the Chicago zip code. My country is, I guess, just US.
Chicago skyline. That's a real Chicago skyline in the background too. And a real Chicago clock.
A real Chicago resident.
Well, semi. You only got there a couple months ago, do we?
Once I get through this first winter.
Yeah, we'll see if you make it.
Okay, so looks like I gave it all the information at once. And here is a waiver. So this is our standard waiver for all of our events, you know, refunds, whatever, postponement and like cancellations and stuff. It's just asking if I agree. So I can just go ahead and say, I want to sign off on this waiver, and we should start our transaction process. Cool. So ta-da, just like that, we used the chat and we bought 3 tickets. Here's the details. This is the event we just signed up for. Purchase code 658, some confirmation email. What else is in here? It says we bought this general entry ticket and we bought 3 of them. And here are our confirmation codes. And here's our cart summary, the cost, processing fees, sales tax, etc. So just like that, we're finished. We're fully registered. If I check my inbox on a real event, I should start to get my confirmation email. I can check over in our dashboard that, yep, ID 658 just popped up. And here is the general entry ticket. I bought 3 of them. And here's all the information I just put in. I want to point out that, like, for example, my last name, this was where I gave it a full sentence, but it is aware enough to know that most of this information is irrelevant. We just need the last name. Picked it up and put it into our registration. So yeah, really cool. And then I want to do a quick step through on our practice in terms of security here. So this approach we're doing is going to be very secure in terms of all this payment information and personal information. I want to point out some of the messages right here. So the most important message that I sent in earlier was my credit card one. That's a lot of sensitive information. So I sent this message, my credit card info is a subset of information. I sent that to our RunSignup agent, which is still on our RunSignup side. What we do on our servers is we sanitize this information. We look at the prompt, we kind of see, okay, what information here is sensitive that we don't want to send out to a LLM? And then we swap it out with just a string. So all these numbers here, we swapped it out with some placeholders. And with that, now that it's sanitized, now that it's no sensitive data in the prompt, we feel more comfortable sending this to an LLM to kind of digest and decide what tool to call next. So this message will go to an LLM. Let's say it goes to OpenAI, and it will decide which one of our tools it needs to call next, which is going to be process payment. The model determines that we need to call process payment to keep this transaction flow going. It's going to put in these input fields, which is the strings that we sanitized. And once we're back on our RunSignup side of the system to do the registration, we go ahead and repopulate all of the sensitive data with the information that we cached. So in this system, in this approach, no sensitive data ever leaves our side of the system. We leverage some cool tools like LLMs to process natural language, but we're always making sure that nobody's personal information or sensitive information will ever get over to that side. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Dewey.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here? So what Dewey showed you is kind of initial development, prototyping type stuff that we did, and it's looking great. It's like it's rolling faster than what I thought it would. So anyway, what's going to happen next? So we're going to work on this chat interface that Dewey was showing you. And we're going to start to build different applications, different agents, if you will, in that chat interface. On the front end website stuff like that transaction that Dewey just showed you, we want to expose sign-up type of capabilities, and we want to do participant management type of capabilities. Like I want to switch from the 10K to the 5K. The second thing we want to do is on the dashboard, we want to incorporate the ability to do data analysis. So when you're on some of those dashboard screens that we have that show you, like your trends and, how many people of each age group, you should be able to have a natural language interface to those to say, I want a 5-year trend of under 30-year-old participation in my race. And it will draw a pretty graph for you. The other type is, in addition to analysis, it's going to be taking actions. So create a coupon, create referral rewards for me. The second thing we'll do is we'll take those tools that we've built underneath, that we've exposed in our own chat infrastructure, and start to expose them to ChatGPT and Gemini. So basically, the same functionality that people are able to run in our chat interfaces will be able to run in these public interfaces. That has to wait for them to mature more, for their registries to become more complete, and so forth. And we'll step through that with these different vendors. Third thing is that Adyen is our backend payment processor. They're also working with OpenAI and with Google. OpenAI and Google both have somewhat competing standards for doing transaction processing. So Adyen is working directly with those folks. So what we expect to happen at some point in time in the future is that somebody sitting inside of ChatGPT is going to be talking to RunSignup MCP to buy a ticket or to sign up for a race. And then when you get to that step where Dewey was entering the credit card information, what ChatGPT is going to do is ChatGPT is going to call Adyen's MCP, and that interaction will happen directly with Adyen, and then it gets transitioned back to us. What we would expect is that OpenAI and Gemini and things like that will have more Apple Pay type of experiences over time. So if you have ever purchased tickets on TicketSignup with Apple Pay, you don't need to enter any information in if you use Apple Pay, because Apple Pay will share, Dewey Nguyen and Dewey at runsignup.com with us, so we can send confirmation emails to Dewey. So we expect for more automation like that to happen. So the LLMs will start to know the people, will start to know like their birth date and things like that, so that the LLM will be able to actually enter that information in. So if you ever use TicketSignup, you can buy tickets a lot faster by clicking on buttons rather than going through the chat interface that Dewey just demoed. But over time, that will become more and more comparable. And what's really interesting for events is that we're going to be right there for events. So when ChatGPT is looking for an event, we're going to have MCPs that will give them good mechanisms to search for your event, and then fast mechanisms to complete a purchase, all there in one kind of environment. And we think that, all these chat interfaces are still new. People aren't used to them. But if you look at over the next 2 to 5 years, we think that that's going to increase a fair amount. And then we'll track the user experience on this. We expect to see things come after chat interfaces, chat text-based interfaces. So, like one of the things I'm excited about is seeing if we can get them to draw graphs for us for that 5-year data analysis type of thing. The other interesting thing is that Gemini 3 just came out, and they're starting to actually, instead of a chat response, they're starting to produce like a graphical response. So it's going to be very, very interesting to follow all that. And we love it because we get to learn more technology and get to build more cool stuff for our customers. So again, in the future, we expect for your customers to say, transfer me into the marathon, talking to ChatGPT, it will talk to our MCP, it will make that transition happen and say, you're transferred to the marathon. And that will all happen directly in ChatGPT. Here's another example. It's just kind of a mock-up of what we expect to do on the backend dashboard. So how can I help you with referral rewards? And we'll have these kind of pre-set up things of, asking how it works, or set a referral reward. So people will be able to click on one of these buttons and it would enter that text, or you just enter your own natural text. And then it will come back to you and tell you what it did and ask you for final confirmation. All right, that's it. Questions?
Yes, we have a couple of questions here. Will the deck be available? Yes, this will be sent out in the email, and it will also be available on our website under the knowledge base tab. Not questions, but 2 shout outs to Dewey. Someone said they're a big fan of you and very exciting work. And Allison said this is probably the most impressive demo of the year. So shout out to Dewey.
So I want to add a comment there, Jen. So
yeah.
So Dewey did the presentation a few weeks ago at a company meeting, and he started off by saying, I took a public speaking course, and it was the only course I got a B in college. And I asked him if the rest were D's. He said no, but we're not quite sure.
Let's see, question. What is the payment model for access to the API? Someone's not a RunSignup customer, so they don't know any of our pricing models.
There's no access to our API. There's no charge for access to our API. Our system is open. So if you have access to the data, so if you were to start a calendar website that listed races in the US, you would definitely want to come and list all, come to our API, pull all the races and fill your calendar up. And we would not charge you for that.
Great. Am I able to use the NPC inspector to push user information from RunSignup to my CRM?
Well, no, not really. You wouldn't use it in that way. You would develop basically an application that transitioned from RunSignup into your CRM. And so, so an example is if you go to Zapier and look for RunSignup, Zapier has a set of zaps that connect to RunSignup that would allow you to enter your user information for RunSignup and be able to extract participant information and then shove that into your CRM with a second zap. And what Zapier has just announced is that they have MCP for the RunSignup Zapier implementation. So what that does is it opens up the possibility for you to vibe code more easily. And I think that, if you look at it in the long term, say a year or two from now, when these MCPs become more public, you would be able to do that interaction between those two systems from your LLM in all likelihood.
All right, next question. In terms of the organization of the query tools for LLM to use on the MPC, do people find that it should be giving the race name versus ID on the search results so the LLM does not have to do the other?
What matters on the back end is how the database searches happen. And so quite often you will need the race ID and the user ID and stuff like that to do some of the queries. But what will happen is that it would, like Dewey's example of the Great Donut Race and Joe Runner, you wouldn't have to ask it twice. Like the ChatGPT would understand that it would make a couple of MCP calls into RunSignup to assimilate the data in the order that Dewey showed. So I think that what you're going to see is natural language, but underneath the covers there's going to be a bunch of JSON and IDs.
Great. Is the purchase via chatbot compliant with fee transparency laws in sales tax?
Yeah, because it's taking the information directly from our website, and so as you saw in Dewey's example, it actually pulled the right information. As a side note, Dewey did a lot of work on some of the fee transparencies that you see in our products.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dewey.
Would it be safer to just have RunSignup host its own LLM instead of using a third-party LLM?
Well, no, I don't think so. What matters is the data that you send to the LLM. For us to stand up our own LLM and try to be competitive with the LLMs that are in the market that are investing, hundreds of billions of dollars, that's just not in our wheelhouse. So we want to take advantage of that technology. We want to take advantage of that investment. And kind of, if you think about it like a step ahead, a lot of your users are going to be interacting with you, and you yourself are going to be sitting inside of ChatGPT or Gemini doing work with RunSignup, whether it's signing up for an event or whether it is transferring or whether it is back on your dashboard analysis type of stuff.
And then I think this is our final question right now, but is the API already live? If so, what do I need to do as a developer to access it?
Go to runsignup.com/API and the documentation's there, and start playing with it. And if you grab a vibe coding tool, you can just point the vibe coding tool like V0 at runsignup.com/API and have it tell you what all the API is.
All right, thank you. I think those were all of our questions. If there's any additional questions, you can always give us an email and we can get back to you on any questions that we didn't answer today. So thank you, Bob and Dewey.
Thanks very much. Bye.